In the far frigid north, this land of snow-covered mountains and glaciers is amongst the coldest places on this planet. Home to more polar bears than humans, Svalbard is known for its untamed and wild Arctic wilderness. Like most places in the Arctic, Svalbard too is currently facing the brunt of climate change, with profound global effects reaching as far as India. It's summers here in the Arctic. The Arctic tundra is streaming with wildlife. Yet, behind the calmness, the landscape are getting constantly altered. Since 1970, the average annual temperatures have risen by over 4 degrees Celsius, raising serious concerns of climate change. At the front line of understanding this changing climate is a small town high up in the Arctic. Halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole, Ny-Ålesund is the northernmost settlement in the world. Once an active coal mining hub, today it is a buzzing science village with over 10 countries from around the world who have established their permanent research stations.
It's a very special town because it's only for research here, and so there are people keeping the town, but they work with the scientists, and then this became an international hotspot. We're very glad with all the countries who are here to work here. So India is one, but we have also Japan, South Korea, China, Germany, France, England, Italy, and the Netherlands. All these countries, they want to know what's happening in the Arctic, but they don't have their own country linked to the Arctic. But here on Spitsbergen, or Svalbard as the Norwegians call it, it's a special treaty where we can do the same things as the Norwegians do. And that makes it very interesting to be here. It's a little bit United Nations up here.
The Arctic is warming faster than any other part of the world, and the evidences are now easily getting noticed here. The Arctic sea ice cover has declined by over 30% in the recent years. This changes has drawn the attention of the entire world, including Indian scientists who are now noticing a teleconnection with the Indian monsoons.
Our mission is quite challenging. Basically, we need to explore the polar regions, Arctic, Antarctic and Himalaya, and also surrounding oceans. We need to link how these polar cryospheric studies are linked with the climate change and how this will be benefit to the mankind.
As of 2008, Indian scientists have been actively involved in studying the Arctic region by establishing a permanent research station, Himadri. The scientists here have been trying to understand the complex hydrological processes in these Arctic fjords and the surrounding environment by implementing several long-term monitoring programs.
India's scientific studies in the Arctic is now a decade old, and Indian researchers have been working on the hydrodynamics and biogeochemistry of Arctic fjords, the mass balance of Arctic glaciers, as well as the Arctic hydrological cycle. There has been immense interest in understanding the connection between the Arctic climate and the Indian monsoon as well. In the coming years, it is anticipated that India's research will be expanded to the other parts of Arctic as well, including the Canadian, Russian and the Greenland side.
This year, a team of Indian scientists are attempting for the first time to sail on a small research vessel to the higher Arctic latitudes. After a long travel with layovers at Frankfurt and Oslo, the team finally lands at Longyearbyen, the largest settlement and also the administrative center of the Svalbard archipelago. After a day of rest, the scientists meet up with the captain of the research vessel, who updates them about the ice conditions up north.
A little bit tricky, just to keep the boat in the position, and because it's this area, it's always tricky because they matching few streams together, and yeah, just to know.
The team also gets a briefing on the safety protocols in case of emergencies.
Air inside. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks to this, you will be floating on the water and no going down.
The research vessel Clion, that is managed by the Czech Arctic Research Station here in Svalbard, is a motorized sailing yacht that serves as a research and logistics support vessel. Without any further delay, the team stocks the vessel with all the research instruments and the essential supplies that they would be needing during the next 2 weeks of sailing. With almost all the preparations in place, bad weather puts the departure on hold, as it would be risky sailing in the open water in such conditions. The next day, as the weather clears in, the team decides to set sail on their expedition up north. With final cargo on board, the team departs from the Longyearbyen towards their next destination, Ny-Ålesund. This 14-meter long vessel will serve as their home for the next 2 weeks, protecting them from the extreme conditions and any untoward incidents up north, as they venture into unknown territories far away from civilization. Over the next couple of days, the team would be stopping at several predetermined locations to collect several samples that would help them understand the interaction in the glacial fjord ecosystem. These samples include collecting water from different depths, sediment samples from the fjord beds, and also hauling a specialized net to collect marine planktons. The team also ventures inland to collect samples close to the glacier snout and runoff channels. After 2 days of sailing, the team reaches Ny-Ålesund for a short layover to collect another team member from Himadri station, and also to get some latest sea ice information that would help them chart their course up north. The National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, as the nodal agency, has been facilitating these expeditions over the years. Arranging the scientific, as well as logistical operations is a nightmare, with so many scientists from different institutions across the country coming in and going out in batches.
Once the proposals are approved and we take approvals from the competent authority in ministry and director NCPR, we have to start our logistical preparation for the expeditions. For starting with the bookings, so we start their traveling. We have to get the bookings for the whole team together. Usually team travels together. We make sure that the team work starts from starting itself, so that they don't have any problem in adjusting with each other when they are in station.
The major research activity undertaken by the Indian scientific community in the Arctic is the long-term monitoring of the confluence system. In order to get continuous long-term data, the team has developed and deployed the country's first underwater multi-sensored mode observatory in the Arc. The observatory, that is anchored at a depth of 192 meters, has an array of 10 state-of-the-art oceanographic sensors, strategically positioned at various depths in the cold fjord water. Today, a team of scientists and engineers are on board the vessel MV Stolbas for the annual retrieval and redeployment of the Mood Observatory. As the vessel heads to the location, preparations are on board to retrieve the end arc setup. The team lowers a transducer in the water, and a series of pings are sent from the deck unit. The acoustic releaser attached to the mooring line responds to these pings, giving them an approximate location.
Yes. Now we are like 22 meters offset from the mooring, and we have established very good communication with the release. So can you ask your friends to have a look out? There will be a big yellow ball coming out shortly. We are executing the release command. After we sight the yellow ball, then we might need to lower the boat for picking it up on board the ship.
Yes, that's understood. I will inform the crew to keep a sharp outlook, and you will release that, and then after we have discovered it on the surface, we will lower the boat and pick it up. Okay.
Perfect and copied, Mr. Plastic.
Once the final checks are complete, the team is all set to send the release command. After a tense few seconds, one of the scientists spots the buoy. A boat is quickly lowered and is rushed to latch the buoy, as the water current might drift it away from the vessel. The instruments are brought on board, one after another, slowly. On being submerged underwater for over a year, many organisms, algae, and even kelp latches on to these instruments. An indigenous polar ambient noise system recorder is also retrieved that helps the scientists understand the ice dynamics and bioacoustics in the polar water. The sensors embedded into these instruments collect time series data that includes water temperature, conductivity, salinity, current, and other vital parameters of the fjord. While the scientists on board are busy retrieving the data, another climate tipping point that scientists are most concerned in the Arctic region is the thawing of the permafrost.
Permafrost is any land that remains 0 degrees Celsius or less continuously for 2 years or more. And so this is a typical landform that is available in cold climate, as mostly available in the northern hemisphere, but there are some permafrost starting to come out or being discovered in the southern hemisphere as well, some available in Antarctic.
Here in Ny-Ålesund, scientists are now noticing patterns of rapid thawing of these permafrost grounds. In order to reach the study area, precautions are taken by mandatorily carrying a rifle while leaving the settlement, as a preventive measure against any encounter with polar bears. Scientists are now discovering destabilized landscapes where permafrost that once thawed a few inches a year can now abruptly thaw up to several feet within days or weeks, and thereby accelerating emissions of up to 1,600 gigatons of carbon that is still locked underground. Thawing permafrost also has a huge impact on natural ecosystems, economy, landscapes, and also on growing infrastructures.
This is actually a very good example of what permafrost thawing or rapid thawing can do to infrastructure. This is an old, I believe, water pipeline, or might be, I think it's a water pipeline. So they're sitting on top of some poles, and so over the years, what happened? The permafrost underneath it thawed, and actually thawed a lot more than expected. And this whole, like the line, it just tilted to the side.
To understand the changes in the Arctic climate, it is important not just to monitor the oceans and the land, but also the atmosphere. Atmospheric constituents and pollutants like aerosol, greenhouse gases, and black carbon have been monitored here round the clock for the last several years. The National Centre for Polar and Ocean Research has collaborated with the National Research Council of Italy in establishing a dedicated atmospheric laboratory, Grovebadet.
Most of the understanding of our Arctic climate system or any Earth system processes, we mostly rely on the in-situ observations. Then we have a suite of remote sensing platforms, and then we'll have the models, and all these things are quite sparse in the Arctic region, primarily because of the hostile environment, the inaccessibility to measurements. So considering this, we have ever since the Arctic program has conceived, the importance of atmospheric research has been understood, and consequently we have set up an atmospheric laboratory exclusively to study the atmospheric processes in Grovebadet, which is almost a kilometer away from the main research village of Ny-Ålesund. So in this laboratory we study the clouds, we study the precipitation, we study the atmospheric vertical structures, and then we'll study the aerosols. And the study is just it's almost about 4 to 6 years long so far that we have been carrying out the studies, and there is still more scope for more instruments and more equipments to be housed in this particular laboratory.
Emissions from human activities at lower latitudes are finding its traces here in this Arctic region, with tourism now becoming a regular affair. Ny-Ålesund has seen a steady increase in human presence, having a significant impact to the overall climate. Another form of pollution that is now a growing environmental concern all across the world are microplastics that are now clogging the remote areas of the Arctic region.
Microplastics are the tiny fragments of the plastics. So when we discard a plastic material, that gets into the soil, that gets washed through the water bodies like rivers, streams, into larger water bodies like oceans. In this process of transferring, it gets fragmented. Maybe by the action of mechanical abrasion by the waves, wind, or even UV sunlight, and also the biological means like microbes also degrade to certain extent. So these plastic particles become smaller in size. When it goes less than 5 mm or so, we call it as microplastic. There is no lower limit, it can go up to micron across size also. The issue of microplastic is that when the plastic is in larger size, we can remove it. When they are in tiny size, it is all the more difficult. And when it reaches a water body like this ocean, definitely very less chance of recovering them back.
Microplastics are emerging as another potential threat to the ecological diverse marine ecosystem. A team of Indian scientists are now investigating the concentration of microplastics in these Arctic fjords as part of their long-term environmental monitoring of the fjord ecosystem.
Today our sampling is on trawling of the water surface. So we want to know whether the water surface of these fjords are these microplastics. Yesterday we have done sediments. Today we are doing with the microplastic net. We are trawling it for 20 minutes at 2 knots of speed, so that we will get to know whether the microplastics are present on the surface of these Arctic fjords.
The samples will help us ascertain the types and quantity of marine microplastics and heavy metal concentration in the Svalbard region. Arctic not just offers a perfect natural laboratory to conduct climate research. Scientists today are researching on several aspects of the Arctic microbial ecology for the biotechnological applications in pharmaceutical industries.
So I've just collected a sample of the mountain Sorrel. This is a location where the glacial water melts, and it's right on the slope. And I'm actually working with the microorganisms associated with the rhizosphere of these flowers in the Arctic, and if they produce any monoterpenes which have a biotechnological application.
Once in the lab, microorganisms in these samples are cultured and later sealed, which then would be analyzed for liminin, a monoterpene that has also been found to possess anti-cancer, anti-tumoral, and anti-diabetic capacity.
Mr. Preste, we are almost ready, so we can take up our anchor and we can proceed close to the location, Mr. Preste.
Yes, okay, thank you very much for the information. We will take the anchor up and we will go close to the location.
Yes, Mr. Preste, you can accordingly calculate the current speed and wind direction, so that we are a bit off from the location, and then we are dropping the mooring, and then we are finally coming back close to the location, Preste.
Yes, we will do that. Very good. I will come back to you later.
Thanks a lot, Mr. G. Message copied and all. Thank you.
After a couple of days of data retrieval, maintenance and sensor calibration, the mooring team is all set to redeploy the mooring at the same location for another year. After a brief discussion with the captain, the team prepares for the deployment of the end arc mooring. On reaching the location, the team starts to lower the array of instrument embedded with sensors attached to a long cable. Several floats are also fastened to maintain the buoyancy. While dead weights are attached at the end of the assembly that sinks to the bottom of the fjord to anchor the mooring. The deployment of the end arc mooring can be certainly considered as an achievement to the capabilities of the Indian scientists in designing, developing and deploying underwater observatory. The data acquired will be of vital importance to the scientific community in increasing our understanding of the response of the Arctic to changing climate